to, get everybody together to talk a little bit about International Women's Day. It's March 8th. It started in the 1970s to honor women and progress. It's celebrated in a lot of countries around the world. It's actually not an official holiday in the United States, but I still think it's a great opportunity to talk about women's issues and gender sort of roles, equality in general. And the thing that I think is interesting is I think there's a lot of groups that are looking at this topic and talking about different types of women's issues. So some people talk about domestic violence, some people talk about other types of equality, and I really am interested in the finances and economics of it all. So, women generally make less than men in a lot of ways and places, and women are responsible for a lot of work inside of the house that they don't get paid for. And the part that I thought was most interesting is when women do get paid, they spend that money on their families. So I've, brought Stacy and Kristen here today to talk about a little bit about their careers and some of the non-traditional jobs they've had, why they took those jobs, and really the impact that it's had on their lives or potentially their families. So thank you both for joining me.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
And Stacey, we were just talking that you actually have a traditional job that sometimes you forget about, as well as a non-traditional job where you help women write stories and overcome their trauma. That's such a powerful process and such a great tool. I think it addresses actually more topics related to International Women's Day. But how did you get into that, and how does it, how does it impact you?
Yeah, I think that, part of one of the International Women's Days theme is a balanced world is a better world. And I think a lot of women's stories get squished down or pushed into the corner. And it doesn't necessarily, I don't want to place blame or anything like that, but a lot of it is our own, because we feel like, oh, we shouldn't speak up, and we have been raised that way. And so my goal is to give voice to women, especially who've been through trauma or traumatic events like an abusive relationship, a tough relationship, that sort of thing, so that they can find their voice and they can heal, therefore. So telling your own story, even if it's just to yourself or close friends or family members, being able to articulate that story, being able to even share it with others in a safe space is really important, because women have a huge impact on the world. And so the more that women tell their stories, as much as men tell their stories, the better world we're going to have. And so that's why I do that. How did I get into it? I was going through an incredibly difficult divorce with a sociopath. And I discovered writing about my life, writing about the chaos that it was in at the time, was incredibly beneficial. And it helped clear up that the chaos that was in my head. I'm like, wow, there's something to this. I started doing some research and I discovered it. And the research, the wide body of research around that, and I haven't looked back. I'm like, everybody needs to know about writing through and about past trauma. So that's how I got into it.
And do you think about the money from the two jobs separately, or is it just all one pile? Like, does it make a difference? Is this your play money or your vacation or?
Oh, no. This is real money, and it's spent on real things. So no, it is, both of the jobs are my income. I consider one primary. The other one is a business that's just getting started, just starting off the ground. I have made some money from it. And so I keep them separate because they pay separate bills for myself and my family. And yeah, that's how I handle those.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
It's so exciting to have multiple streams of income and not be forced into a situation where your creativity can only be channeled into one tiny little area.
Absolutely. And we're talking about it, like the International Women's Day talks about the gender income balance, and they say basically it's not a women's issue. It's not a women's issue. It's an economic issue, and it's good for the entire economy, whatever country you're in, for women and men to both earn money and have multiple streams.
Well, the mindset that gender should have an effect on salary is something that I think we have to let go of. I mean, this is really, we're in 2000, almost 20 now, and still
Right.
This old feeling that men are the providers, and so men should deserve more, or whatever that was. None of that applies to the way that we're living anywhere in the world now.
And do you think we're making, do you think even reparations are necessary, or do you think we just need to say, okay, let's look at places where we're stuck and let's move on from there. Let's move forward. Let's figure out a way to make it run better and more efficiently from here on out.
Well, I think ultimately change happens in the heart, and that doesn't happen so fast, but the world that is based on win-win, that's a non-issue. So ultimately, I mean, that's I think I'm sort of visionary and idealistic, but I don't know about reparations. What do you think about that?
So I'm a very let's figure out how to move forward kind of person. And I would rather see that money and effort invested into sort of education or other programs that could really help balance, whether it's familial responsibility and helping people understand emotional labor, or getting more women involved in STEM or coding, or just addressing social norms of what jobs are traditionally female and male. So I'd rather see a way to move forward and sort of discuss those differences instead of looking back and saying, well, that's not fair, because I just don't know that gets us anywhere.
Right. So looking at STEM type of issues, when I was growing up, that there were male jobs and female jobs, and some crossover, but not a lot. And now my kids that are late teens, almost early 20s, they have a different concept of men and women and their roles in society and their jobs. However, we're still seeing far fewer women in STEM, educational facilities as well as jobs than we have, in the past. We're still having that issue. What do you think is the problem there?
I don't know if anybody has any experience with,
tough.
It's a hard one. I've read a couple studies, and I definitely don't want to say this is all the blame, but I do think that there are stereotypes within us. And, it's just, when you listen to stories of women that went to all girls schools, they come out and they're expecting to be called upon, and they're willing to give their voice. And I think that sometimes in mixed gender classrooms, the adults use these stereotypes and discourages some of the equality, that it's completely unintentional. But So that's one of the differences. I really like the Success of Wealthy Women podcast from the Wall Street Journal. And I've noticed that a couple of times. Women that go to all girls schools are generally more confident when they get to college.
Wow. That's interesting. I've never heard of that yet. Maybe we should talk also about, you shared a statistic about how many women versus men are in a different types of services and service working and things like that. Do you think that gender roles play a factor in that? Ones that have here, I guess I could share this.
Well, I thought it was interesting that you just said that your kids are noticing less of those gender normative jobs. So I wonder if that's fading. Maybe in developed countries. I think that graph is for about 30 countries around the world. And so, you know, agriculture jobs and subsistence farming is still very female focused in a lot of places.
Right.
As well as trades and other crafts, because those are jobs that women can enter when they have the time and then leave if they're pulled out of it. So I think that this is another one that will vary across the world.
You know, the one thing that makes that I'm interested in knowing is if like the millennial folks, because they are a little bit more fluid in their jobs, is that going to more equalize what is a woman's job and what is a man's job? Because a man, or typically in the past, it was like you go to work for a company and you work for that company for your entire life and you move up in the company. And that is no longer really a factor at all. We're going to move jobs multiple times, whether you're a male or a female, nowadays in the workforce. And so I wonder if now that the jobs becoming more fluid and the requirement that jobs become more fluid is going to help equalize that. I think that's interesting.
And if we look on a global level, we have these organizations like Kiva that are supporting entrepreneurial endeavors in third world countries, and many of these loans are going to women's groups.
Mm-hmm.
Member of Kiva for a number of years, and I have loaned money many times to many groups of people, and it's really exciting that they can take this seed money and grow a business out of it, and that just takes all of the cultural bias out of the whole situation. Kiva is doing this project for International Women's Day where they're asking for support to fund 10,000 loans to women during this period of time. And it's just really exciting because women are making things, they're growing things, they're little small businesses that are just right in their town, that they're not really influenced by these global trends or societal norms. This is just an exciting revolution, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit more about Kiva? How did that get started? Do you know?
Well, it's been going on for a while, but it was based on this principle of micro lending, where instead of people like this having to go through a bank where all these traditional charges and interest rates and all of that stuff, no, this is direct from me through their organization, direct to an entrepreneur, and I don't charge any interest on the money that I've loaned, and they pay it back according to a schedule, and I just think it's an ideal situation.
Wow, I love that. I absolutely love that. Very cool. So,
and it's such small dollar amounts. I mean, most of those loans are $500 or $1,000. So you can just see what a small amount of money, what a big impact it has.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that the International Women's Day organization, or the concept says, is there are men who support women, men who are supportive of equality and parity in the workplace and all kinds of things. So tell me what your experiences are around that.
Well,
they're allies, essentially.
Yeah, I worked in a hospital for many years, and the camaraderie, the team spirit that we created around, I worked as an organizer for medical clinics in our poorer sections of our community, and the collaboration there was not about gender. Now, I think probably some of the salaries, you would find that issue, but that wasn't public information, so that was just not something that we thought about on the ground or in the trenches, so to speak. But it was fabulous to see men and women, doctors and nurses, and definitely more nurses were female, definitely more doctors were male, but there was still a nice crossover, so it was hopeful in that regard.
That's good. For me, I know one of the things I've loved is that my husband is very supportive of my side passion and my work there, and so and I haven't always had that from other folks. So it's really exciting when, you feel valued and someone says, you can do this. This is great work that you're doing. I love it. How can I support you? And it really is amazing. It's fabulous. So I think we should all find some more women that are, maybe doing side hustles or maybe having, trying to start businesses and help them and support them and encourage them in many ways.
Mentor.
And I hope that this video will be an encouragement. Just, 3 women with their, own jobs and their own passions and discussing it and tips and, challenges in life and, all of those things that really show that it's possible.
Absolutely. Love it.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. I am excited to see what other content people develop on Friday, and I will be pulling it all together and hopefully coming up with, I don't know, some stories or highlights or some ways to share it. So I want to make sure that it, this lives on. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, for the invite. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Steve.
Have a good day.